If your toddler is somewhere between 2 and 3 years old, chances are you're dreading potty training, right? So if you're in that phase, stop what you're doing right now and let's talk. Welcome to the Dr. Amaka Nnamani show, where we talk about all things parenting and where we emphasize preparation over perfection. If this is your first time, welcome. I'm Dr. Amaka Nnamani, and today we'll be talking about potty training. So let's get into it. So let's start with a few things today. We'll start off with when is the right time to potty train, right? And you get all sorts of answers around this, but we generally recommend as pediatricians, the average child will be potty trained somewhere between 27 and 30 months. So that's roughly between 2.5 and 3 years of age. Now, I know if you're watching me from a different country like Nigeria, or which is where I grew up, chances are that number is closer to like 9 months of age. We won't even talk too much about that. But we know that the average child is potty trained but somewhere between 2 and 3 years old. Now, what I want us to remember, however, is the age doesn't really matter as much as the readiness. And when I say readiness, I mean readiness on the part of the child, but also readiness on the part of mom or dad. So mom, if you're watching this, it's important that you know that your child may be ready at 18 months or may be ready at 3 years of age. And there's nothing wrong with that. Additionally, there's several times when I have parents in my office where the child is ready, but mom or dad probably isn't, right? Maybe you're expecting a newborn, or you're going to be moving houses or moving states or some big transition. In cases like that, I usually recommend that even if your child is ready, that you show yourself some grace and give yourself some time, right? So again, readiness is more important than age, and the average age of potty training would be somewhere between 2.5 and 3 years of age. Okay. Now, if you're in other parts of the world, that number may be slightly different. And I know a lot of times it has to do with the economics of purchasing diapers. And yes, I know I've got 3 children of my own. I know how expensive diapers are, but it's also important to be sure that your child is developmentally ready for that. Which leads us to the next thing we're going to talk about is what are the signs of readiness? How do you know that your child is actually ready to be potty trained? Now, we just talked about one thing, which is, their age or just different things going on. But a few things I usually recommend to parents are their developmental readiness. So one is what we call our fine motor skills, right? So in order for a child to be ready for potty training, they need to be able to pull down a diaper, right? Like a pull-up or underwear. So that's something that has to do with your, with basically the fine motor skills. What else? The other thing we need to know is speech. So your child needs to be able to receive and actually also vocalize what that they need to use the potty. So when I say receptive speech, so that means that your child usually should be able to obey 2-step commands like go and bring me that ball, or go there and bring me that ball. So that's a 2-step command. And then your child needs to be able to state that they need to use the potty, like mommy, I gotta go potty, or mommy potty. It doesn't have to be a full sentence, or mommy poo poo, or daddy poo poo, right? So it doesn't, if your child isn't quite there yet, he or she may not quite be ready for potty training. What else do we need? We also need bladder control. So bladder control means that your child's bladder is actually able to hold urine for longer periods of time. Now remember, when your baby was just born, right? All they're doing is eating, peeing, pooping, right? And sleeping. Right now, at that young age, they don't really have much of a bladder capacity, which is why children will eat, pee, poop, and then they're ready for more. Now, as you get older, the bladder capacity increases, and so your child needs to be able to hold urine for at least 2 to 3 hours at a time. And so what you may notice is that prior to, when they were younger, they would have been peeing, like you get wet diapers like every hour, every 45 minutes. But now you may realize that your child will have like soaked diapers that are like, every 2 to 3 hours. That's a sign that their bladder is most likely increasing in its capacity. So these are like the top things that I usually recommend. And then obviously your own readiness, right, as a parent. If you're going through a major transition, like I said, like moving or any major or even a minor transition, it might not be a good time to start potty training your child. Now, how do you potty train? Oh, this is a good one. There's the evidence, the child-focused way of potty training, and then there's the intensive. You may guess which one I'd be more likely to recommend. And yes, if you guessed it, it would be the child-led approach, which means that you are setting the environment for your child for potty training. You are, maybe setting alarms for your child. And then importantly, something that I talk about a lot on this channel is literacy. So reading to your child around books around potty training, so that's kind of a latent or silent way of talking about potty training without it being in your child's face, right? And then during the day, I usually recommend maybe going every 2 to 3 hours, being consistent, right? So if you are not consistent with that, with potty training, a lot of times it doesn't really help. And every child is different. Actually, studies have shown that girls will usually potty train quicker, maybe by about 2 months, not by a whole lot, than boys. So if you have a girl, or maybe you have a girl and a boy, and you're like, wait a minute, my daughter was just quick to train and she showed more interest, that may be why. But again, every child is different, and you have to know the temperaments of your child in order to encourage and not be frustrated with potty training. Right, so we want to make sure you have the right environment for your child getting a potty, right? Because a lot of children, a lot of toddlers will be afraid with the big girl or big boy potty, like a regular toilet that you and I use. And so I usually recommend having a different potty seat for them, or you can just even get like a potty, like a potty chair, or you can get like a potty seat cover to put on a big boy or like a regular potty. That's something you can do. And then reading to them, so that's kind of silent ways of making sure that they're getting that education around it. And then very importantly, showing grace to your children and yourself. So regression will likely happen. There will be accidents, right? And so with that, if you're potty training, it might be a good idea to have like a hardwood floor or something, somewhere where it's not, a lot of carpet. So you're not having to deal with cleaning or dealing with the smell or poop or all of that stuff. So it's really important to remember, do not punish your child for accidents. Accidents will most likely happen. Actually, on the contrary, I recommend, and most pediatricians recommend, positive reinforcement. So what does that mean? That just means that when your child goes in the potty, that you make such a big deal about it. Now, again, it's important to know your child's temperament, because I have had kids where it's like mom or dad does that and they're like, what's going on? And then they regress. So, note to self, know your child's temperament. But with that said, most children will positively respond to something like a sticker. Like you can have a sticker chart where you're rewarding them. Don't give things like candy or bubble gum. Those are not healthy things to offer, or even like food, right? You usually want to offer things that are, just things that you can keep up with. Stickers are a really good one, or like a pencil or eraser, or something that's appropriate and that you can continue to keep up with. Honestly, the most common one and it's easiest to do is just getting yourself a sticker chart, and every time your child, pees in the potty or poops in the potty, you're putting that on the sticker chart. And kids love stickers, okay? So remember, no punishment for regression. You can just have a conversation with them and just don't make a big deal about it. Mommy still loves you, daddy still loves you. It's okay. And you catch back up with the next one. Now, biggest mistakes parents make when they're potty training is unreal. So one of the major ones is just having unrealistic expectations of your children, right? So having us trying to potty train a 6-month-old or a 9-month-old, again, if you're in a different part of the world or just maybe watching this from other parts of the country and you're doing this, that's unrealistic, honestly. Again, the bladder capacity isn't there. It's not common that you see a 6-month-old that's able to vocalize or say that they're ready to go potty or pull down their pull-up or a diaper. So that is a very unrealistic expectation. And what I've seen a lot of times is that parents will get frustrated when the child maybe seems to do it once or twice coincidentally, and then the child is punished. Please do not do that. That is not the right way to go about it, okay? And that is very, very counterproductive, actually. Another mistake parents make is lack of consistency. So maybe you do it for 2 days and you realize, oh man, I gotta travel for work or something else happens, and then and then your child has accidents, and then maybe you get frustrated. So I find that a lack of consistency is a really big one, a really big reason that children don't really get potty trained or at least the way the parents want it. So again, have realistic expectations, be consistent, and encourage your child. Again, the other big mistake is when you're going through a transition, feeling like, oh, it's okay to continue. Now, I always tell my parents and, parents at my practice, one, if you're going to be expecting like a big transition, and again, a big transition is something like, maybe a wedding, right? Like parents are getting married, and you're going to be busy, maybe a divorce or a separation, starting daycare, moving homes, moving across the state. That is probably not a good time to start potty training. I usually say give yourself at least a good 4 to 6 weeks before starting that process, for your sake as mom or dad, but also for your child's sake, right? So those are the top mistakes I see parents make. And then finally, regression is normal, right? It's also important to note that daytime potty training is not exactly the same as nighttime potty training, right? So we just talked about how during the day, you're setting timers for every 2 to 3 hours. Now at nighttime, you're probably not going to want to do that, right? Because you want to get some sleep, and so does your child. So your child is probably sleeping 9 to 11 hours at a time at this age, or maybe even longer, right? And so you want to make sure your child has a pull-up at that time, right? Most children will be potty trained by age 5. So a few things to note. When do you call your pediatrician? One, if your child is past age 4 and showing no interest at all in potty training, that may be a good thing to bring up with your pediatrician. Also, if your child has a developmental disorder, with the most common being a speech delay or autism spectrum disorder, that would definitely be a reason to talk to your pediatrician. If your child is autistic and is nonverbal, they most likely will not be potty trained for a while, if at all. So it's a good conversation to have with your pediatrician. Now, if you're in the US, you will most likely be able to qualify to get free diapers sent to you as a result of that medical condition, autism, and maybe some other developmental disorders. So a good conversation, again, to have with your pediatrician. Now, we've talked about a lot here, so let's do a quick recap. One, while we know that most children are potty trained sometime between 2.5 and 3 years of age, readiness is actually more important than the age of your child. Now, we talked about the signs of readiness, right? And bearing in mind that both the parent, as mom or dad, as well as the child need to be ready. And then the fine motor skills, so being able to pull down diapers or rip it apart, right? Being able to receive speech, so 2-step commands, and vocalize that they're ready to go potty, bladder control, and then just making sure that the social environment is ready for the child. And then we talked about the top mistakes that I see parents make, with the most common really being unrealistic expectation, lack of consistency, and then big transitions, right? And then remembering, if you don't take anything else from the video, please remember, do not punish your child for regression. If anything, positive reinforcement is more important. And as always, read to your child, read books just in general, but with potty training, there's several books out there that are written around potty training. If this video was helpful to you in some way, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with a mom or moms in your life that you think this would help. And until the next time, Toodles, remember, preparation over perfection. Until the next one, have a great day. Bye.